And one of the things she used to say to me all the time was that your fingers are like athletes. And so think about your repertoire as your fingers running their marathon. It's just a really, really good tip for not just warming yourself up, but for improving your oral skills, improving your theory knowledge, and improving your sight reading. So why not do all three in one if you're going to use the warm-up? Progressive arpeggios exercise is an exercise which I taught across 3 or it could even be 4 months of warm-ups, of the monthly warm-ups, which are now taught by Angela, but when we first introduced them I was teaching these. And it's not a beginner exercise. That's the first thing I want to say. That doesn't mean that if you're a beginner here, you have to just leave. It's still a great one to kind of get thinking about, but I just want you to know that even the simplest version of this exercise is really kind of intermediate, late intermediate. And then as we progressed in the warm-up, we ended up with really quite an advanced version of this exercise. So the principle behind this exercise, first of all, I'm going to play it to you guys and see. It's all about stretching the fingers, creating a beautiful stretch across the fingers. So when we warm up, I often tell you guys in your warm-ups to include breathing and you know, getting your brain into the right place, close work, stretch work. By close work, I mean your fingers working close together, like a scale or individual fingers, or you know, 4-finger placing exercises or 3-finger placing exercises, or these kind of things where your fingers are working right beside each other. That's close work. That's a Heather term. It's not a term that's widely used in the harp, but to me it makes sense because your fingers are close to each other. And then also including some sort of stretch work, such as arpeggios. And that is then to stretch the fingers out. Now, the kind of theory behind this actually comes from something that a piano teacher told me when I was at university. I've spoken about Mary McCarthy many, many times when I've spoken about my learning journey. And one of my most fantastic tutors that I had throughout my 4 years at university was Mary McCarthy, who was my piano tutor. She also then went on to teach me Suzuki teacher training, and she's just a wonderful woman. Anyway, she used to use like the most amazing analogies, which when I was like 18 and 19, I didn't really understand. I just was like, she's off her head. She's totally mad. Which, by the way, we laugh about because Mary says herself she's totally mad. She used to say that after a whole day at the conservatoire, like she would work from 9 until like 7 at night, she had to go to the gym to work off all the energy that she built up. And now that I work at the conservatoire, I'm like, I just need to go home and lie in a dark room. I don't need to go to the gym. But anyway, she uses the most amazing analogies. And one of the things she used to say to me all the time was that your fingers are like athletes. And so think about your repertoire as your fingers running their marathon. You have to warm up. No athlete would just go and run a marathon without doing any kind of warm up at all. You have to prepare for the repertoire. Again, you wouldn't just decide one day you're going to run a marathon, enter and go and run it. You have to prepare and work towards that marathon. And on the day of the marathon, you have to warm your body up really appropriately. You have to do some walking to get the muscles warm, and then you have to do some stretching once the muscles are warm. And this concept, which Mary taught me, developed into my approach to warm-ups, including that kind of centering yourself and centering your mind with the breathing, and then the close work, and then the stretch work. And it's a formula that's worked for me for so long. It's really, really great to do. And then the final part of your warm-up should be something related to the skills that you need to complete your repertoire. So you're always relating your warm-up to the repertoire you're playing. Now, stretch work. The reason arpeggios and inversions are so good for stretch work is because when you play an arpeggio in root position, this is a C arpeggio in root position, you have a stretch between your second finger and your thumb. When you play any arpeggio, but let's just take the C arpeggio for the moment, in first inversion, and if you're not sure what these are, we have individual exercises which cover all these, so I'm not going to teach all the inversions here in this session, but you can go and look at those. When we play the first inversion, we have a stretch between the third and the second finger. And when we play the second inversion, we have a stretch between the fourth and the third finger. And so these exercises, the arpeggios and inversions, are so fantastic for that stretch work because you're stretching here, and then you're stretching here, and then you're stretching here. And so you really are getting a fantastic stretch across the whole hand. So that was an exercise I just showed you. You could place the C in root position, and then the C in first inversion, and then the C in second inversion. Great stretch. But if we are playing these all the time, it can get a little bit boring, you know, placing the same shapes, etc., etc. And also when we play our tunes, yes, in some tunes we're placing shapes and then making fists, but in a lot of tunes, especially as you progress to late intermediate and advanced, you're linking shapes. And that's why I came up with this progressive arpeggios exercise, which is where you don't play just the C root first inversion, second inversion, but you play a whole bunch of chords by just changing one finger at a time. So here we have the C in root position. We're going to move our second finger, just the second finger. Okay, so when we had our C in root position, we had the stretch between the 2 and the thumb. Nice. Move the second finger up a string. We're now in A minor, first inversion. And the stretch is between the 3 and the 2. And then I move my third finger up the string, and I now have F in second inversion. And then finally I move my fourth finger up a string, which gives me an even spacing between all the fingers, which gives me D7. I'm not going to go over major sevens, minor sevens, dominant sevens, because this isn't a harmony class, so let's just call it D7 for the moment. And then I move my thumb and I'm back to root position, one tone higher on the D. And so the exercise becomes move the second, move the third, move the fourth, move the thumb, back to the start, move the second, move the third, move the fourth, move the thumb, and you're back to the start on the E. Now, that's the trick. So the question was, what's the trick for moving through these shapes? Which is why I was kind of like, there's not a trick. You just have to move through these shapes. But if I was going to say there was a trick, it would be that each shape you just move one finger. Okay, so we've got our root position, move one finger, the second finger first, this is our next shape. Move one finger, this is our next shape. Move one finger, this is our next shape. Move one finger and start the process again. That's the trick, if you like. If you're working on this exercise, I'd highly recommend giving yourself the challenge of saying the chords and the inversion that they are in as you move through the exercise. Why am I making you guys do that? It's hard on the brain. Yes, it's hard on the brain, but if you're able to understand when someone says, for example, A minor first inversion, if you're able to immediately go to that chord, not only will you be quicker learning in a group situation where you might be learning by ear, but you will also be quicker learning on your own looking at a piece of sheet music, because you'll start to see the shape on the page, you can name the shape on the page, and you can find the shape quickly with your fingers. So instead of looking at the sheet music and saying, okay, it's middle C, maybe I'll put my 4 there, and then the next one is E, and And then you work out, oh yeah, I can use my 4 fingers. Right, it takes ages. Where if you look at the shape, you're like, that's an A minor first inversion. 4 fingers on. Much, much quicker. And so if I start from E minor, which is where I stopped, I would be saying E minor, root position, C first inversion, A minor second inversion, C7, F7, sorry, I apologise, F in root position, D minor first inversion, B diminished, second inversion, G7, root position, G root position, etc, etc. So I'm saying the shapes as I move through the exercise. That wasn't the question, but it's just a really, really good tip for not just warming yourself up, but for improving your oral skills, improving your theory knowledge, and improving your sight reading. So why not do all 3 in one if you're going to use the warm-up? You might as well challenge yourself and improve in all those areas.